All right, I want to take just a couple minutes and go over something with you. I've got the Blade 230S here, and I want to talk to you a little bit about mechanical setup of this helicopter, and it's very important. So a lot of times I hear people talking about how this thing's tilting on takeoff. It's doing weird things, and a lot of that is due to a poor mechanical setup. I know what you're thinking. Well, I got it brand new. I just took it out of the box, and everything should be fine. That's not necessarily the case. So you need to mechanically check everything over on a helicopter really well, or you're just asking for you're taking a gamble. And so the first thing that I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to turn on my helicopter, my transmitter.
Throttle hold, high rates, acro.
Okay, so I've got my transmitter set up in a high rate mode. My rate's 100%, and then if you look here, it's
Middle rates, low rates, middle rates, high rates.
I'm not really running a low rate. Right there's my high rate, and the next thing is, so I'm running 100% on my sub trims and on my rates, and then on my panic switch,
well, shit.
I'm running 150%.
Well, shit.
That's what kicks this thing into a panic mode, and those two things are needed to put this helicopter into what we're going to put it in with. It's what's called servo adjustment mode. And basically what servo adjustment mode is it sets the servos in their true zero state, and it locks the FBL out so that we're not getting any of the gyros working to move the servo horns up and down to account for yaw, tilt in the helicopter. So all I'm going to do is I went ahead and, well, I'm going to unhook my tail motor, and I'm going to unhook the lead, the positive lead on my ESC. Now I left the signal switch hooked up mainly because this helicopter really won't run with the main power off. It'll twitch, it'll try to turn, but it won't hurt me. Next thing I use my little blade grip pad under my tail, prop it up, keeps it centered. So let's just power it on. Let the helicopter bind. And it did. So if this was a brand new setup, which mine is not, then I want to make sure that my throws are in the correct direction, and they are for my elevator and my ailerons. And then my overall cyclic, I want to see that I'm getting positive cyclic pitch and negative cyclic pitch right here, which I am. So all of my throws are correct. The next thing I generally check is I like to tilt the helicopter and see if the gyro is counteracting my tilt, and mine is. So as I tilt to the right, I should see the servo of the swash plate counteract to the left. As I tilt to the left, I should see it counteract to the right. Same way, if I'm tilting forward, the elevator servo should tilt it to swash to the rear, and likewise. And if this was a if this tail right here wasn't driven by a motor like this one is, motorized tail, then I would look at what happens when I was moving my tail left and right, and to see if my servo horns counteracted that. But this is not the case here. It doesn't really matter. As long as this thing is set up positive and it's correct in the transmitter, then the tail should act right. But the only real way to find that out is by powering up the main blades and making sure this motor's spinning in the correct direction. So let's go ahead and put this thing in a servo center mode, and this is how I set the mechanical center up. So I'm going to bring my servo sticks to the far right, holding the panic button. So I've got my sticks to the outside lowest extremes, holding panic.
Well, shit.
You'll see the servos jump. Now I'm in a servo adjustment mode, and now you can see that there is no action being taken from my FBL unit to correct my swash being out of level. And so the first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to look at all my servo horns and make sure my servo horns are running parallel kind of with my tail boom. And the way you do this is, now they're in their zero state, you want to take the screw off, pop the horn off, and go ahead and move it until it's as plumb as you can get it. Now it could be up or down a tooth, which may throw it off a little bit, but this is as close as I can get mine. And that's without adjusting any of my sub trims. I really don't want to adjust my sub trims at this point in time. So once that's done, the next thing that I want to do is make sure that my helicopter is sitting level, and I use my frame for that. So my bench here is fairly level. So I want to check the level there. My helicopter is sitting level. And then the next thing I'll do is I'm going to turn my head to get it kind of out of the way here, and I'm going to run my level across the tops of my swash horns. And let me see if I can do. So I'm on top of my swash horn. So we can get on the same terminology here. If you look at this helicopter, this swash has 3 servo control arms. I think you can see them there. Actually, I'll tell you what. I set this swash out right here to send to someone. We was talking to on the page that needed a swash. So here's a swash, and they're set up at 120-degree intervals from each other. And so if you take 120 times 3, it's 360 degrees. It completes our complete. It adds up to a complete circle. And so the way that these things are set up, your elevator, what we call our elevator servo, is our channel 1. Okay, and then it goes clockwise, channel 2 and channel 3. And that's how this helicopter is set up as well. So in this case, our channel 1 servo elevator is sitting up front, and then channel 2 is right here, and then channel 3 is here in the rear. And sometimes you'll notice that some helicopters, the channel 1 elevator servo is in the back, but it still moves clockwise. Channel 2 and channel 3 run consecutively as you go around. And so if you're ever having an issue setting up where do I plug my servo leads in, just kind of remember that. Your channel 1, 2, and 3 as it comes around most time when you're setting up FBL units. And so anyway, so now I ran this level across the horns of my swash, and I made sure it was level in that direction. And then now I'm running across one of my back servo arms and the front servo control arm, which is channel 1. So I'm on channel 1 and channel 2 now, servo horn leads, and I'm making sure I'm level there. And then I'm going to make sure I'm level here between my channel 1 and my channel 3 servo horns. And you can use a swash level for this. There are some made, but this is a very small helicopter, and so swash leveling tool that I typically use on larger helicopters like this one doesn't work well on the 230. So using a small line level is the best way to measure between channel 2 and 3 to make sure it's level, and between channel 1 and 2 and channel 1 and 3. So I'm measuring it kind of like a triangle, and that gets my swash level. And so if it wasn't level, if the swash was not level, the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to lengthen. I'm starting in the rear between channel 2 and 3. I'm going to take a turn in one and a turn out of the other one. So I'm moving them together. Take a one turn in and one turn out of the other. And I'll do that to this horn, to the channel 2 and 3 are running level. And then when I come to the front, when I check between channel 1 and channel 2, I'm going to be adding or taking turns out of channel 1, the elevator servo. Okay, and that's how I level my swash. And once I've got that swash level, the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to check the blade grips and make sure that when I set my level on my blade grip here and on top of this little Allen screw, that this level is level on my blade grip. And you can use a pitch gauge to do this, but it's a small helicopter and this works really good. Use a line level and sit on top of this blade grip and make sure this blade grip is level and compare it to this one. And they should be, if one's out of level, the other one will be out of level the other way. And so then what you'll have to do to bring these blades level is you'll have to take a turn out, either one turn out of every servo horn, or you'll put a turn in every servo horn. It just depends on whether or not you're at a positive degree pitch or at a negative degree pitch. And so that's the steps that we're going to use. We're going to level the servo horns. We're going to make sure they're running level with the tailbone. Then we're going to level the swash, not by eye. We're going to use a line level to level across channel 2 and 3. And then we're going to level between channel 1 and 2 and channel 1 and 3. And when you get this swash level, it will be, that line level will be level in all 3 directions. Okay? Then the next step is to put that same line level on top of the blade grip and move all of the servo horns or control links up and down together until you have 0 pitch right here on these blade grips. Now the reason this is important is that when this FBL or S3X is in servo center mode, this is what it believes is 0 stick. This means it believes that the collective is at completely 0. And it's expecting, and the gyros are expecting to have no vibration out of these main blades at zero pitch because there's no counteraction there. We're not using any principles of Bernoulli for lift when these things are running on zero pitch. And so this FBL is counting on the fact that this thing is running zero pitch when it's at its set zero state. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're mechanically zeroing the helicopter. This is the first step before this thing leaves the ground that I do with every helicopter that I've got. I do all of my mechanical zeros. Now there's another step, and I'm going to show it to you real quick. Now the FBL thinks it's at zero, but what does the transmitter think? Yeah, that's important too. Am I getting full range of collective, both positive and negative, in my transmitter? And I like to run about 13 degrees. Positive, 13 degrees negative. And so here's how I set that. And it's not as easy with the AS3X because we can't adjust overall minimums and maximum throws as well as you would like the 7200 series, or the BStack series, sorry. So here's what I do. I'm not going to store the center mode. Does it really matter?
Telemetry lost.
Just tell me I lost telemetry. I got it. Power my helicopter back up. Let it bind.
Telemetry recovered.
Now, what I'm looking for is, I'm going to take and I'm going to move my collective cyclic to 0. And what I'm looking for here is that when my collective stick is at 0, are my blades at 0? This is how I do this. This is an easy layman's way of doing this thing. Is I take and I look at these two blades here, and one I got to 0 out. You want to move your cyclic around a little bit, get this thing set, and then bring it back to 0 state. And if my two tips of these things are touching each other like this, then I know it's 0. 0 pitch. But if you notice, as I come into positive, how they spread apart, if I come into negative pitch, how they spread apart. It's like a tail wagging the dog here. So I know that when I'm at 0 collective, these two things should be right there. And I'm going to look at my transmitter, and mine is, I've already set it. But if it happens to not be at 0 on your transmitter, you want to go to your output screen and adjust your sub trims. And this will be your cyclic sub trim, channel 6. Now the cyclic controls both channel 1, 2, and 3 collectively. That's how it got its name. It's the collective cyclic pitch of all 3 channels on this helicopter. And so I want to make sure that my sub trims are set so that my 0 pitch on my collective, channel 6, matches my FBL 0. And now when I change from idle of 1, 2, and 3, or if you're flying in a normal mode, which I don't, I fly with a constant head speed, you're not going to see any kind of bounce in the helicopter, or wanting to change direction. Another thing you're not going to see is that if this thing is set, the TX in its 0 and this thing at its 0, then you're going to have more cyclic throw if you're trying to do inverted flight, flips, and things like that. So that helps with this helicopter. I hope that helps you guys with the setup. Trust me, if you set your helicopter up like this, you're not going to have that initial flight that you have. Put this little girl in the dirt. She's going to fly real good for you. And this is the case with any collective pitch helicopter, and really any fixed pitch helicopter as well. Good mechanical, safe setup of this helicopter makes a big difference. I'm going to tell you one other thing, and then I'm going to let you go. I've been long-winded here. I'm running a metal geared servo in here. And what I suggest is when you get this thing from a factory stock helicopter, go ahead and run the stock servos that you have. But the minute that you crash this thing, and we're supposing you've already checked this mechanical 0, after you crash this helicopter, I want you to put it back in servo mode and look at these horns. And I bet that this horn will not be in a 0 pitch. And what happens is those plastic gears that hold that horn in place, when it takes a strike and it pushes down the cyclic, will actually skip a gear, and that horn will come down or up, whichever way it strikes. And now it thinks 0 is here. Now you could fix that by popping the horn back off, put it back in 0, put it back on, but you've still rounded out the end of those teeth. If you upgrade these servos to a metal geared servo, and this is an inexpensive servo, it's an Emax digital sub micro servo, but still it's metal geared, so I can take a heck of a blade strike and not damage the servo. However, something always gives. Something's got to give when you crash. So, you may end up stripping the teeth on your main gear then, or you may end up breaking something in the plastic head. The chances are, if you're running these stock blades like what these are, there's a lot of flex in them, and they're going to take a lot of the impact, and the chances maybe of stripping or breaking some of these other head components are slim. On my V2 series, I run carbon main blades, and it's night and day difference in how this thing acts. These blades actually add expo to the helicopter, and that's exponential. That's how fast the cyclic acts around center stick. And so, in my experience, when I'm running these plastic braids, I feel like I'm running like a 15 or 20% expo when I'm at 0. But when I'm running the carbon blades on here, it feels like I'm running 0 expo, and then I'll add maybe 8% or 10% to them. So, there are some advantages to running the factory blades when you're learning this thing. But anyway, I've given you a lot of information at once. The thing I wanted you to take from this was put this thing in servo mode, set the horns, level the swash, level the blade grip so that it's 0 pitch. Make sure you're 0 pitch in your transmitter, and this thing's going to fly good. The one other step you can do that I strongly suggest doing after you've done all this work to this thing and you have your initial flight, what I would do is go ahead and put this thing in trim mode. And what that does is just like setting the trims in a plane or any other helicopter for that matter. What you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that if this FBL or some reason these main bearings are in this frame, or for whatever reason this thing wants to start to travel to the left a little bit when it's at 0 stick, we're going to add sub trim, or we're going to trim this helicopter. But the way you trim this helicopter is when you put it in trim flight mode, it's detecting how much input it's taking over here on the aileron stick and the rudder to keep this helicopter, or it's really the aileron and the elevator. It's detecting how much input I'm having to do to keep this thing at a steady hover, or at a center position where it's not moving left or right. It's detecting how much input I'm having to constantly add to it to keep it in a steady hover. And then when I land it and take it out of servo center mode by hitting the panic button again and then unplugging the ESC, it stores those sub trims into the FBO. It's a really cool function. And you can set the same function up in a lot of FBLs and a lot of gyro systems for planes as well. But Blade was kind enough to do that with this unit, and I suggest you use it unless you want to fight this helicopter all the time. Do a trim flight mode and let it set its sub trims within the FBL. An FBL unit such as the S3X does not like to have trim inputs from the TX. It does not. You could sit there and add as much left and right trim to this thing as you want, and chances are it's going to detect it as a stick movement, and it's going to go back to where it was before, and that's on center, because it's always going to return to what it thinks its center is. So that's the keys to takeoff. Mechanical setup, level the swash, level the grips, 0 pitch in the TX, and then run a trim flight mode. I know this is a long video. I hope this helps some of you guys with this thing. This is probably one of the most popular helicopters right now on the market, because you can see it, and it flies closer to a full size, a 450 plus size helicopter. This is where you can be and not have to spend a lot of money on the parts when you replace them. So, hey, I hope this helps, and you guys have a good night, and hit me up if you have any questions.